The Alabama Crimson Tide return to Bryant-Denny Stadium to take on the South Florida Bulls, one of the most intriguing group of 5 teams in college football. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. We are here previewing, predicting, breaking down this showdown on Saturday night in Tuscaloosa. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Guys, go to mybookie.ag, use promo code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Again, that's mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get your special welcome offer today. Alabama does battle with South Florida in a rematch of one of the most interesting games, really, of the 2023 season. Who can forget that ball game when Jalen Milroe was benched? Alabama looked terrible. They went on to win, but the questions about the Crimson Tide certainly were at an all-time high at that point. Now the two teams wrestle with a brand new head coach in Tuscaloosa, and certainly a different set of circumstances. But here comes South Florida, one of the most interesting group of 5 teams in the country with a high-flying passing attack and maybe an upset on the mind. Who knows? Again, I'm Chris Phillips. He is Cole Thompson. We are previewing, predicting, breaking this thing down. Cole, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to talk about this one with you.
We're not going down that path. We're gonna stop right there before the video gets way too out of hand. We are not seeing an upset of any means whatsoever, but we are watching a really talented group of 5 squad. You know, there's going to be for the next few weeks trying to find that separation of teams that actually belong in that G5 hunt for that last playoff spot, and those who are just going to be qualified G5 teams that you're fun to watch on a Tuesday night when you're going and seeing them action, or Thursday night football, because if you don't want to watch the NFL, that's going to be a terrible game. But the USF Bulls, I'll tell you what, there are very few teams this year that I think have a coach that if he does well is going to be pried away for a big-time job. Alex Golesh comes on in with the same type of mindset underneath Josh Heupel. And last season, we saw a complete turnaround in Tampa. You're watching it again. This is a team that if you see them start to hit their stride at the right moment and show glimpses of a shot of at least keeping this thing interesting with Alabama, they're going to be on your radar as one of those rosters that you're going to watch to potentially be in that college football playoff race. I am not sleeping on Byron Brown, Alex Golesh. That pairing feels like something that could end up being very masterful down the stretch when we're talking about that 12th spot.
Cole, forgive me for trying to create intrigue and make this one interesting. You never know.
You want to create intrigue.
You never know how many. You never know how many South Florida Bulls fans we might have tuned into this. Either way, guys, again, this one taking place Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, a 7:00 Eastern time kickoff on ESPN, by the way, on the big channel at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Bama is a 30.5-point favorite in this game. The over-under it is set as 63.5. The series history, like I mentioned, Bama leads at 2-0, and the last meeting was last year. And again, what was one of the strangest games we saw all season. Alabama going to Tampa already was weird enough, and then the way the game played out, Jalen Milroe benched. I remember coming out of that game thinking, God, this might be a 7 or 8 win Alabama team, and how wrong we all were, obviously. As you look at the South Florida Bulls, Cole, you mentioned, again, they're 1-0, beat Bethune-Cookman 48-3 in their season opener. But Byron Brown is where it starts for them at quarterback. He set school records last year for passing yards, passing touchdowns, completions, completion percentage, all in an individual season. He's also a dual threat player. And Sean Atkins, his favorite target, is back this year after hauling in the first ever, Cole, 1,000-yard receiving season in program history. We'll get to their issues on defense in a second, but you mentioned off air, you like Byron Brown a lot. Again, he's what sparks this. What do you like so much about the offense here and the Bulls offense specifically?
I think number one, it's going to be building off of what you saw last season. So when you have that type of relationship with quarterback and head coach, it already gives you the benefit of the doubt and really a sense in the right direction. Byron Brown is one of those players that is going to consistently fly under the radar because of where he plays. But if you put him at a Power 4 school, you would feel very confident in his passing attack. You'd feel confident in his throwing motion. You like the way that he reads the field and defenses, that he makes direct decisions. I think that his confidence is one of those things that is very well manageable and something that really stands out about his game. I mean, last season, one of the best passers at the group of 5 level. I think he had a 63.2 completion rating. On top of that, you look at his passing yards to touchdown to interception ratio. It was 23-11, averaged 8.2 yards per play, over 3,000 passing yards. He's got that mobility aspect that you kind of brought up. 11 touchdowns in 2023 on the ground. And he just feels like every single time he gets the ball in his hands, he's direct, he delivers, and he's concise. He is very quick with his decision-making. He doesn't second-guess himself. He oftentimes doesn't catch himself slipping up when it comes to making those type of plays. I think that that's a benefit. You know, you watch when you play Bethune-Cookman. I get it. It's Bethune-Cookman. You got to go ahead and take it with a grain of salt. But you're rushing for 74 yards. You're punching it in for a touchdown. You're finishing top 2 in rushing. You get in the open field, there's a reason to believe that you can be lethal. And I'm not saying that, again, where you're talking about an upset. Bulls fans, please know that I think that you are a team to root for in the group of 5 level. You really are. And you could be a team that actually wins your conference this year now when you see the departure of teams like SMU. But at the same time, you're trying to beat that over. You're trying to beat the spread. And a guy like Byron Brown, he is a spread killer. Like, this is one of those guys that you do not want to see start getting hot, because the second that he does, he's going to keep things interesting.
The other side of the football, Cole, is where things get really dicey for South Florida. They were last year in passing yards per game a season ago, allowed 288.8 in passing touchdowns. They allowed 29 of those. They do have linebacker Jalen Schuler back, Amaris Brown at corner. They were all AAC players a season ago. And this was an opportunistic defense, Cole. It's what they relied on, creating turnovers, 24 of them forced last year, 14 interceptions, and 10 fumble recoveries. So I think that's the area where, again, if you're pulling for the South Florida Bulls here, you were concerned about on the defensive side. As we dive into this game, Cole, breaking it down, Bama, South Florida a year later, do you think – it feels silly to say this is a game that's like circled on the calendar, but you have to think that Alabama, you know, after last year and how the game went, especially Jalen Milroe not playing in the game, I don't think he even saw the field in that game. You got to think this is one Bama would like to go out and make a point and sort of say, hey, like last year was a fluke. This is who we really are. Obviously, it's a brand new coach. Everything's different. And I'm sure last year's not really playing a factor in their mind. But I just think it's kind of interesting, right? When you're looking for storylines in a game like this, the matchup last year and maybe Bama wanting to go out and get some quote-unquote revenge for their struggles in Tampa last year.
Yeah, I would say so. That's probably a factor. I think that also you got to bring in the fact that South Florida is no longer that team that is once known as kind of a laughingstock or bottom dweller in the American Conference. They've turned the corner. And they've also seemed to become a very solid destination when it comes to the transfer portal. You know, one of the guys they brought in was Rashad. I can't believe I'm saying this name wrong. Deshaun Rucker, the Tennessee transfer. That's a guy that's automatically starting. You look at their defensive front. They bring in Decarius Hawthorne. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. They bring in Kejon Banks for the nickel position. They feel like a team that has embraced knowing that they were at fault at times last year and susceptible to giving away explosive plays. So what do? You make sure that you go out and you address those areas so it doesn't become a problem for matchups like this, to where you feel more confident in the direction that you're going in. You feel more confident about the position. Their offensive line was really potent last year. Their defensive line, I think, is a little bit more stout because if it's another year in the system, they feel a lot more confident. And so you're talking about this being a game for Alabama to set a statement. I think this is also a game where Jalen Milroe wants to be able to say, listen, I know that I was out last year. I know I didn't play in this game. I get that you went to a different pathway. This was the reason why you turned back to me. Let me show you what I would have done in this game differently that would have changed the persona around us. Because of, you may have thought, okay, certainly I get it. We didn't beat Texas. We had a bad performance. I was not on my A game, but I would have turned the corner. And I think that this is a game really for Jalen Milroe. This is one of those moments where you're looking back and you're seeing to him, I want to make a stance. Like I know that I played well. I went 7 of 9 passing against Western Kentucky, but I really want to play in that game last year. I really want to set a standard for myself. And now I get to do it. And I get to do it in front of my home crowd. And more importantly, I get to do it before we get the big game next week going to Camp Randall in Wisconsin.
Yeah, Cole, you mentioned Jalen Milroe went 7 of 9 last weekend against Western Kentucky, but for 200 yards, he averaged 22.2 yards per completion and threw 3 touchdowns. And a big part of that, I'm really intrigued to see, do they continue to stretch the field, obviously vertically, and is Ryan Williams, again, a big part of that? Cole, he had 2 catches for 139 yards against Western Kentucky. He averaged 69.5 yards per catch, and they both went for touchdowns. So, again, we're talking about a South Florida defense. I'm sure they've shored things up or added guys, but they were one of the worst in college football last year, and that does not bode well. And then you throw in guys like Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law and Jeremy Bernard, and I'm sure they're going to want to get those weapons involved. And I think on the other side, Cole, I think it's a really good test. It was interesting. We talked to some Bama folks last week leading in the Western Kentucky game about Western Kentucky loves to throw the football. Maybe this is a challenge for the Alabama secondary. They didn't get that memo because Western Kentucky threw for 103 yards. I mean, the passing game was non-existent. Keon Sabb was really good. I believe he had a pair of interceptions in that game. But I think it's nice for Bama how the secondary was the question coming in. You got young guys back there, very talented but young. And you kind of get to ramp up, Cole, in this season, like Western Kentucky, pass happy. Then maybe it takes a step forward with a Byron Brown and some of the weapons they have on the outside in that passing game. And then you go to, Wisconsin, who they're not exactly an air raid type of offense. But I'm just, you get a couple of these games to really get your feet wet and allow the secondary to feel good about themselves and make some big plays. And in a game like this, similar to last weekend, that if Byron Brown beats you on a play, this should be a game that your offense can bail you out and probably score 40 or 50. And, one busted coverage isn't going to kill you in a game like this. So I think there's a lot to watch, actually, on both sides of the football for the Crimson Tide.
You had 18 total pass attempts in a game. 18 total pass attempts. That does not happen in Tuscaloosa, and especially in a Kalen DeBoer-style offense. But the premise was, hey, listen, we got to get our running backs going. It's 2 new players that we expect to be big-time threats in Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. So let's see what they can do on the ground. Ryan Williams, oh my God! Chris, I'm not fangirling over here because let's be real, there were some great performances from freshman wide receivers. 3 guys down at Auburn, Alabama. The guy up at Columbus, Ohio, number 1 overall recruit Jeremiah Smith. There's even guys like Ryan Wingo at Texas, but you listen to some Alabama fans, they're saying a couple of things like, oh, Isaiah who? Oh, yeah, 007, have fun down in Austin. We got a 17-year-old. You go ahead and he's going to be our number 1 guy. You can have that 7 number down on the 40-acre. Like, it's a little oversaturated. Like, people saying Kobe Pretense is better than what you got currently down in Austin. Like, well, we're not going to go to that level. But the fact is that you still haven't seen that second pitch from Kalen DeBoer's offense with this unit. And I think that's a scary thought if you're looking at this from a perspective of South Florida, if you do believe that you still have question marks with your secondary. And I'm not sure if they do. I believe that they think that they have turned the corner in the right direction, but Jeremy Bernard had 1 catch for 17 yards. That's not going to be a thing that we see in the regular season. Jeremy Bernard's been a part of the system for now 2 years coming on in from Washington. He is going to understand exactly what you can expect for a Kalen DeBoer-led team. Kendrick Law and Kobe Pretense have been on campus for 2 years now. You expect them to take that step in the right direction. Caleb Odom, this is a freshman that's coming on in. He was committed to this program before Nick Saban departed. He was sure as hell committed to the program after Kalen DeBoer came on in. He's going to be a factor in this game. So you are right. You're seeing the progression of where these quarterbacks go. What you will watch from a Byron Brown to a Tyler Van Dyke and a Phil Longo offense is going to be completely different. And the talent that you will see in the trench play for Wisconsin will completely differ from what you're going to see in South Florida. But you are getting that ramp up to where the defense is progressively going to see more challenges. But you feel good about the direction of where this offense is. 9 passes from Jalen Milroe in 1 game, and it was for over 200 yards and an average of 22. A 17-year-old looking better than some 22-year-olds out there, making it easy for his offense. That's going to be something that I think gives you a lot of confidence if you are an Alabama fan this morning, is that you only saw gear 1. What happens when you face off against a quarterback that's going to force you to put it into gear 2?
And I think to your point, Cole, putting it into gear 2 and cleaning up some things and just kind of finding out what you have, I think is really, if I'm an Alabama fan, that's what I'm looking for this week, because this is your last tune-up before you go to Camp Randall, like you mentioned, and, think what you want about Wisconsin. That's going to be a different test than you faced. First road trip of the Kalen DeBoer era. Things can get weird in Madison, right? So you need to make sure you've got everything buttoned up, cleaned up, good to go. I would expect them probably to open it up a little bit. But, I mean, you look at the rushing attack. 47 for 334 is what you went against Western Kentucky. So that reminds me of old Alabama football.
Yeah.
That's, Justice Haynes went 4 for 102. Jalen Milroe, 10 for 79. Jam Miller, 5 for 54.
Nick Saban gone, but his energy's still there.
Right. I mean, Nick Saban was in the building for that game, obviously, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had his hands on the playbook a little bit. That's 47 carries. I don't know who would have bet that. Six rushing touchdowns in that game.
In a Kalen DeBoer offense. So I will not be surprised if they open it up a little bit, get the passing game humming a bit, and just, be clicking on all cylinders and clean up the last things that need to be cleaned up before you go into what's could be a really interesting game in Madison against the Wisconsin Badgers. Cole, I'll let you go first. Predictions, thoughts on how this one plays out. Forgive me, like I mentioned, if I maybe had a little too much flair for the dramatics opening up. I doubt you're going with the upset pick here. Do you think this one's interesting at all, or is this more about Bama just tuning up before the trip to Madison? No, you're tuning up for the trip to Madison because if you're going to get a few hiccups here, how do you respond after a few plays from Byron Brown? I want to make this clear. South Florida may have the best group of 5 quarterback in college football. Like, this may be the guy that we are talking about, to where in D2 football, there's this award called the Harlan Hill Award, and it's given out, which is their version of the Heisman. I sometimes wish that the group of 5 would have some type of award to where we honor these type of players that show out. Because Byron Brown, it's a blessing that he stuck around in South Florida when he probably could have gone to a major Power 4 school and been a big proponent for their team on finding their way to the college football playoff on an easier path. But instead, he's staying there. He's taking the long road, less traveled, that's probably going to keep South Florida in this conversation after an Alabama game, that they still are a team. Like, you can lose a game in as a group of 5 school and still find your way in if it's a quality loss. And this might be what you see. I'm excited to see what this passing attack looks like for the Bulls. They brought in the Purdue transfer at wide receiver, had a big-time game against Bethune-Cookman. So you like the passing game. And I think that you're going to see a couple of slip-ups here and there from Alabama. It's not going to be a shutout. I don't think it's going to be a shutout. But I do think also you're going to watch as Kalen DeBoer says, you know what? We are now going to take that next step forward. We didn't have to use that first gear. We're going to throw it in the second gear. We may even have to throw it into the third gear for a couple of drives. That way we show you what we're made of. And this is where Alabama takes control. I think Alabama wins this game. I think Alabama does show why they are still Alabama. I think you're going to see a much better passing attack. I do. I think that this is going to be one of those 275-yard performances, maybe even 300-plus yard performances. I think Jeremy Bernard is going to be the star of this matchup. Ryan Williams may have been the opener, but the reason why you feel confident about Alabama's passing game is because of the kid that you brought in from Washington. I think that he is going to have a Jamison Williams-esque impact. It's going to be against this team. I'm going to say Alabama wins this game 45-17. I think that you are going to see maybe even get to 20, but I'll just be cautiously optimistic and say 17 because I still like what Kane Woolmick's defense does.
Cole, I feel like either you're psychic or you cheated off my homework, because great minds think alike. I have the exact same score you have.
Look at us. You're both going to be idiots or really smart.
I promise that I have this just written down, and Cole, I don't think he's even looking at this, but he nailed it. 45-17 is exactly where I'm at. And I agree with you on pretty much all fronts. I mean, I think that there's going to be some early plays that Byron Brown and company will hit. I think they're a really good story. And like you mentioned, they're a really solid G5 team. They're no longer a laughingstock or a joke. I think Bama's going to want to make a point, though, after last year. I just, not that it's like, again, I don't know that they have this one circled or anything. Like, they didn't lose, obviously, but I think they're going to be motivated to put on a much better showing. Like, in these smaller matchups, I think you're looking for anything in regards to, motivation and going out and approaching it the right way. And I think it'll be easy to get up for this South Florida game is what I'm saying. Night game at Bryant-Denny. I do agree with you. I think they open up the passing attack a little bit more. You established in week 1, okay, we feel good about our running game. We feel good about the fact that we're 3-4 deep at running back. Daniel Hill got in that game for Bama as well. Really young, talented back. So I think you feel good about that. I think you got to cut Jalen Milroe loose a little bit. To your point, Jeremy Bernard, Kendrick Law, some of these other guys. I think Ryan Williams, again, will be involved. I think he's just a really special talent. Kobe Prentice, he's really special. He's really special. He's fun to watch. I don't know if he's going to have 2 catches for 140 for 2 touchdowns again, but I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to do that either. So, yeah, I think Bama pulls away. And again, I'm right there with you. Great minds think alike. I've got 45-17. I do think by midway fourth quarter, we are seeing more of Ty Simpson. Alabama wins it comfortably, but maybe early on your secondary is getting tested a little bit. And, I think that's something maybe Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack would actually welcome, because it's good to put stuff like that on tape and have teachable moments. And, we could see Bama's secondary just kind of dominate again, and Keon Sabb just continue to, establish himself as a guy from the transfer from Michigan that, again, he played really good in that first game. And I think a guy that probably wasn't talked about enough in the preseason. But again, Cole, I'm right there with you. I got the Crimson Tide 45, Bulls 17, a game that is never really in doubt. So great minds think alike, my friend.
Chris, I hate to make this joke, but I've been waiting until the very end just to go ahead and have it. I love you, Bulls fans. I'm excited to see what you do. I think that I actually picked you guys to be in the conference championship against Memphis for the AAC title. So I'm excited to see what the future holds with Byron Brown. But you may be the Bull, but you're getting the horns on Saturday when you march into Bryant-Denny Stadium. BDS is going to be rocking and rolling. Dixieland Delight is going to be that signed-off song for Jalen Milroe to take a bench and enjoy watching as Ty Simpson embraces his role as potentially the heir apparent for what is going to be a Crimson Tide tyrant in 2024.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night for the Crimson Tide. And again, I think that passing game against that secondary, that's a matchup you've got to love if you're Kalen DeBoer this week getting ready for it. So
absolutely.
Guys, let us know. What are your thoughts? Do you agree, disagree with us? Preview predictions. How do you feel Alabama will fare against South Florida this weekend at Bryant-Denny Stadium? Guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those as well. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.